let's see. Okay, here we go. We're just gonna, all right, we will see if this works. All right. So um, the area where we are ministering is in what they call the Four Corners area of the United States. It's where four states um, come together, and so you can see on the map here that we're in the northeast area of Arizona. It's a high desert area. Elevation here is about 5,500 feet. I guess I didn't translate that into meters. Um, but anyway, so it's a higher elevation. I'll just let's see. Okay, so here's a view looking out to the south of us. There's a lot of mesas, and you can see it's kind of a shrubby uh, desert. It's part of the Colorado Plateau. Um, a little bit about the history of the Manual Mission, and the Manual Mission was established in 1924, and we one of the pioneer missionaries that was working in this area. We know her family from some connections in Kansas. But in the early days, the ministry really was a ministry of visitation. They established the mission on the side of an old trading post, and they would go out and visit various hogans. And the hogans are kind of an octagonal shaped home where Navajo people traditionally live. Nowadays, a lot of living in other types of structures, but it's very common to see a hogan out back. Uh, the Navajo, it looks like I'm skipping ahead. So in those early days of the mission, it involved primarily a couple of ladies going out and visiting, going out on horseback, visiting Navajo camps and ministering to medical needs as well as sharing the gospel. And today, 100 years later, there's still a visiting ministry. There's a older gentleman that lives across the way from us who visits the elders in the community, and another lady that lives next door who visits some of the ladies. So there's still a visiting ministry that goes on. There's no longer a medical ministry that's associated with Emmanuel Mission. The mission today, there's four primary objectives to the mission. One is to provide quality education, and that's part of what, or the main reason that we are here is we're helping with the school ministry. Although, as time goes on, we would love to get out into the community and find new opportunities to serve with the local assembly that meets here. But we came out, and the school year, as I was telling Brother Peter before the session began, the school year is well underway. We're about 6 weeks into the school year. So one of the objectives of the mission is to provide quality education for the kids in the area. And in addition to that, it's primarily a tool for the gospel, to bring the gospel to this Navajo community. They also work with Bible studies and other activities that encourage adults and young people to be saved and to mature as Christians. Um, they also would like to help and encourage participation in the local church, and then also to help people who are struggling with alcohol problems or drug abuse problems. And so that's kind of the history of or that's a little bit of what Emmanuel Mission is currently doing. I'm just going to put up a couple scenery. I wish we're so new here. We don't have a nice repository of photos, but I just thought I would put up a couple of scenery photos. This one is a picture of a rainbow over a big rock or a big mesa called Sessa'a. And then here's kind of the view looking out to the south of us. But as I'm showing that picture, I'll just mention a few things about Navajo culture. Uh, One of the things that's interesting is they really enjoy, and this is a generalization, but they in general they like to do things together as a family. It's a dispersed community. As you look out there along the desert, it doesn't seem like there's much going on, but at nighttime you'll see different camps where they call them camps where they live, and the lights will come on, and so it's kind of a rural, um, historically an agrarian type community, and so people enjoy doing things as a family. They're living together with aunts and uncles, grandpas, grandmas, living out in these camps. And it's also a matriarchal society. So historically, it would be, and even to this current day, many of the camps, it's there's a matriarch who is kind of in charge of what's going on in the camp. So any of these camps, they might have several different dwellings where different family members, people belonging to the clan would live. Um, some of the sadder things that are going on on the reservation here, there is a lot of alcoholism, there is a lot of drug abuse and broken homes. Marriage as an institution is not strong. There's a lot of what might be classified as common law marriages. And then we don't know the full depth of it, but it's becoming evident that there's a real problem with suicide and people feeling hopeless. The other thing that's going on here is there's a real stronghold of Native American religion here. Um, some of the kids who are coming to the school would have grandparents who are medicine men and involved in different occult practices. So there's a real spiritual battle. I think the fact that the mission has been here for 100 years, it it's telling from the standpoint of there's a lot of spiritual opposition. Um, we've met different neighbors who it's just very difficult for people to leave behind. Um, I'm thinking of the song that says, I have decided to follow Jesus, no turning back." I think it's very hard for people to make that decision and to turn their back on some of those um, the native religion that they have. Uh, let's see, I'll move on to here's a picture of the school from the outside. And behind those elm trees on that wing there, that's where the classrooms are. And I threw this picture in here. His, years ago, it was operating as a boarding school. Nowadays, they send out buses and vans to pick up students. And so currently, they have two vans and one small school bus that are operating somewhatly. And principal goes out in her personal car and picks up people. And so that's kind of an item for prayer as far as the mission needs. It's just they could use a mechanic. They could they would appreciate prayer for provision for transportation needs. So the kids are bussed in. This is a picture of the students in my classroom. That's not me standing at the back. That's a visiting brother from California who came out to do some. He was sharing some gospel presentations with my students, and he has a two-thirds scale tabernacle that he's going to set up and do some messages this weekend. But I have 15 students in the classroom. You can see that there are a few what they call Anglo students, and there two of those are my boys, and then there's a couple girls who are their folks are also missionaries here at the school. Um, but as far as the school, it is kindergarten through eighth grade, and we have 60 students this year. The instruction is in English. One thing that is going on, and I'm assuming that in the First Nations community in your area, it might be similar with each succeeding or with each successive generation. The native language is spoken a little bit less. So the older people in the community would prefer um, to speak Navajo. And then like the students in my class are learning Navajo. That's one of the classes that is um, provided at the school is to offer Navajo language instruction. So let's see what else I have here. This is a picture of a day that some brothers and sisters, Navajo brothers and sisters, came up from New Mexico, and they were giving some school supplies to the students. And so that was just a real blessing. Um, the school itself is they don't charge tuition and they don't take government funding. So they're just um, relying on the Lord to provide for the needs of the school. And God has done that very faithfully. I believe the school was established in 1948 and it continues to this day. Um, Maybe I should say 1940s. I don't want to get too specific there. Um, during the during the summer and also at times during the school year, there will be vacation Bible schools and different groups will come in to do either work projects or do work projects in the community around the school. And so the school is, of course, this time of year, that's especially for us, that's a big part of things. And in a while, I'll talk a little bit about myself and the role that I have there, and also Sarah and what she's doing. There's a church that um, meets on campus, and I wish I had a picture of the people, but here's a picture of their building, the Emmanuel Navajo Chapel. And uh, one of the things that we are adjusting to is just learning to sing in Navajo. Neither Sarah nor I are able to say much more than ya at a or hello, and so we're learning to sing in Navajo, but it's a combination of English and Navajo. During the breaking of bread meeting, there's a little bit of both, depending on who's sharing. So you might say it's a multilingual um, body of believers. Um, and I'm going to show another slide here. We're beginning to meet some of the believers here and to get into some of their homes. This is a couple of elderly ladies who had us over to their home, and we made Navajo fry bread and had a nice little visit with them. But as time goes on, we would love to get to know each one of these believers. The Lord did provide an opportunity to speak a couple of weeks ago at the chapel, and I started a series on Ephesians. And so there's just um, there's opportunities there, and we want to be as involved as we can in the local fellowship of believers. As far as our family, this is a picture of our family that was taken recently. Our oldest son, Caleb, living back in Nebraska, was married, and Sarah and I have 11 living children, and I guess we just gained a daughter-in-law, so to speak. Not so to speak. We gained a daughter-in-law. And so our family, as far as how the Lord called us to this work that we're currently in, um, it's interesting. Way back in 2001, just shortly after we were married, I had been interested in coming to Emmanuel Mission to teach there. And at that time, we talked to the elders of the assembly. We talked to the assembly, and they said, we don't feel like it's God's timing yet. And at that time, it was hard for us to accept that and to see God's hand in that. In retrospect, we can see how the Lord, the different ways that He led us over the years. But it's interesting that there was that interest years ago. And then a couple of years ago, I had heard about an opening. I was going through a recertification process with my teaching certificate, and I heard about an opening, and I kind of hemmed and hawed about it. and by the time I inquired, that position had been filled. And so I just kind of forgot about it. That was in 2022. And then this spring, um, the principal of the school here was looking for someone with a Dutch last name, and somebody that started with Van something, and my email from 2022 popped up. And so she kind of sent a tentative letter to the effect that she felt like the Lord was prompting her to contact me to see if there was still interest. And so when the letter came, I showed it to Sarah. And the interesting thing about this is, unbeknownst to me, Sarah had been um, praying for the last, I don't know, 6 months, something like that. We had lost our third child, David, passed away in 2021, and we were kind of in a different stage of life from the standpoint of we had pulled back from some of the ministries that we had been involved in with the chapel in Lincoln. Just kind of pulled back, and we felt like we felt like the Lord was wanting us to get more involved again. Um, but Sarah had been praying about where that would be. Would that be in Lincoln? We had been tied to the chapel in Lincoln for um, I've I guess I came there in 1982, and then of course Sarah, when we were married, she joined, and we've been there for years, involved in the ministry. And so she was praying about where the Lord would have us to serve, and if it was in some place or a location different from Lincoln and at the chapel, that the it would come by invitation. And the thinking there was just that um, our whole life and ministry had been so focused on the assembly in Lincoln that um, it would almost be the sort of thing like if it would have to come. What comes to mind is the Macedonian call, like come over and help us or something like that. And so she was kind of taken aback by um, kind of wondering, is this God's answering this prayer? And for my part, I had been praying about, I'd spent a lot of time getting my teaching certificate back up and running, a couple years of school, which was interrupted by David's passing. And I was just wondering how to be a good steward of um, that education and the time and the money that went into getting that back up and running. And so one of our first steps was to talk to um, our sending assembly in Lincoln is so tiny. We have one elder. I went and talked to him, Sarah and I talked to him, and we were surprised. He said, he encouraged us to go and visit and to see if the way that the Lord had gifted us would be helpful to them down there, and if it would be a good fit. So we visited in this spring of 2024 over our kids' spring break. And then when we first arrived, one of the things we were praying about is how would our kids feel about it? Um, and initially, I would say about half of the kids were not sure if this is where they wanted to land. But as the week went by, we asked them again, and the Lord had done had changed some hearts, and they were all willing to come and interested in coming. At some point during that week, I started praying that if the Lord did not want us to move this direction, that He would just close the door and emphatically close the door to this opportunity, so that it would be clear. And it just seemed like a door that kept on opening. And so let me see what the next picture is here. Oh, you can look at our house for a while. That's where we're currently living. Um, uh, let's see, where was I? Oh, we spoke to Bert again. Coming back to Lincoln, we spoke to our Bert Mass, who's the elder at our assembly. And another concern was my mother, who's getting up in years. We talked to her. There are different things that I guess that in our minds perhaps seemed like they would be obstacles, but the Lord was working in the hearts of the people in the assembly. And so in I don't know what month it was, maybe April or May, April, we were commended to the work at Emmanuel Mission. And then on July 14th, July 15th, that we moved down to Emmanuel Mission and started getting adjusted here. So what I'm working on this year, I'm teaching grades 3 and 4 at the school here. And Sarah is actively homeschooling our high school kids that are 8th grade and up. So we have 3 students who are in that category. 9th grade and up, I'm sorry, because the school goes up through 8th grade. And then she's also helping me every day. She comes down to the classroom and helps with reading groups, and she's helping with, as I'm doing the math 3 instruction, she's doing the math 4 instruction. And so she's helping in a lot of different ways in that way. We have 5 children who are enrolled in the school, and this is something that's new for them. They had been homeschooled previously, and I would say on the whole, they're adjusting well. I think the part that is more challenging is just the school is a majority Navajo school, and of course they're Anglo kids, and so they're not being readily accepted into the different groups that are here. So that might be an item for prayer. But just moving into, I'll just show this picture. We have 3 boys that are living in this, they call it the tree house. It's kind of an overflow for our little house. I'll go back to our family here. A few prayer requests would be for some of the believing students that we have that are growing up in traditional homes. That's a hard road to hoe. And I guess my prayer request for them would be that the Lord would just preserve them as they're growing up in those homes. There's so many who make a profession and then make shipwreck at some point in their life. And some do. The Lord works in their lives and brings them back, but it's I would appreciate prayer for some of these students who have made professions and they're showing signs of growth, just for that they would be spiritually strong and fed, and discipled. And then also there's a number of students who are not believers, but they have a tremendous privilege because they're hearing the word of God every day. They're hearing the gospel, that they would believe and obey the gospel that they're hearing. And then as I think about the Navajo believers, I think a good prayer request would just be spiritual maturity. One thing that we're kind of learning as we're here that um, there's a lot of Christian groups in the area that have kind of dubious theological viewpoints, and so just real maturity and discernment on the part of the believers here, that they would be grounded in the Word of God. And then, as far as the mission here, they do need a mechanic, and they do have ongoing issues with vans and buses and keeping the fleet running. So I'm sure they'd appreciate prayer for that. And then another thing that has come to light is that this coming school year, they will be needing another teacher, probably upper elementary, but not necessarily. So that's something that the mission itself would probably appreciate prayer for. So that's my short little slideshow. Um, I'll just leave it at that.
That's great. Thank you so much, Matt. That's excellent. I think Rob Kerr is now on by phone. So, Rob, did you have any questions there for Matt that you'd prepared? Rob, are you there? Don't see him connecting there. Was there anybody else who had some questions maybe for Matt and Sarah, further information? Um, it's just so neat hearing about the situation. It's a real frontline mission situation. Amazing that it's been going for that many years. The Lord has preserved it. I didn't realize that the school doesn't charge any tuition. So that's amazing that it's all just done by faith and relying on the Lord. And yeah, that's very encouraging to hear. I think in the classroom situation, I'm sure the Lord is going to use you in a very significant way in the lives of those kids and their families by extension. So that's really neat, and we certainly will keep those things in prayer as well for you and for encouragement. You know that there's always spiritual warfare, as you mentioned, in serving the Lord in that context. So we're praying just for the Lord's encouragement and protection for you and the family and the kids as they adjust. A lot of transition, eh? A lot of new things.
Matt, you were saying you had 11 living children. I assume the one that's married is not living with you, but are all the others?
We have three children who are out of the home. We have one that's married, and then we have a daughter. Well, I skipped our son. We have a son, Tim, who is attending school at Ethnos 360 Bible Institute in Waukesha, Wisconsin. And then our daughter Lily graduated. She's younger, but she graduated from there this last year, and she's living in Greenwood, Nebraska. She's working, and she has a heart for missions also. It'll be interesting to see how the Lord leads her. And then we have eight children who are here with us on campus.
Well, now, I don't want to presume, but your house did not look that big, so have you got a lot of bunk beds?
We have some bunk beds. Surprisingly, it does have four bedrooms. We don't feel, not yet. It's not winter yet, but and the kids do spend a lot of time outdoors. But yeah, come winter, we might find things different. But it doesn't seem uh, we are pretty happy here. So it has four bedrooms, I guess is what I'm going to say. And then we have a tree house for overflow. So it's those treehouse kids that are going to be cold this winter.
Yeah. What kind of heating do they have in there?
It's wood burning stoves, and so this time of year, we're going to, this weekend, Lord willing, we're going to get our chainsaw up and running, and one of the brothers here knows a place where we can cut down some trees and get ready for winter. So that'll be a big effort here over the next, I don't know, 3, 4 weeks, I suppose.
Great. Just for those who might not know, some people will remember meeting Dennis and Val Easton and their family when they came up some time ago. And so Dennis Easton's wife, Val, is a sister to Matt. And so some people may not know that connection there. So I taught Valerie at North Lakes Bible College as well. And it was kind of through Val that the connection was made, that Matt came up to visit her and met Sarah. Interesting how the Lord works these things out, eh? Step by step. And then, of course, Ron and Judy Hartford, their daughter Rebecca had been, was she teaching? No, her husband was teaching. Yeah, he was a student. Oh, sorry. Yeah, so he was a student. His parents were there as teachers, Rebecca went there to work, and that's where she met her husband. And there's a Hartford connection and an Easton connection there. Yeah. Just going to try again and see if Rob is able to connect. Rob, are you able to connect? No, I think I see his phone number there, but he was having difficulty connecting. So, anybody else have any questions that they'd like to put to Matt?
The nearest town.
It's Cortez would be where we can do some shopping, and that's an hour and a half, Cortez, Colorado. And then for more options, we could go to Farmington, and that's about 2 hours into Farmington, New Mexico. So,
Wow.
Isolated.
yeah, we're out there a ways.
Medical assistance. What happened there?
I'm sorry.
Medical assistance, like what do you do?
Yeah, the medical assistance would be a couple hours away. So
And groceries? Is there something
Gro-
local?
groceries would be an hour and a half to 2 hours away. So we make well our van is in the shop right now, but yeah, in general we go out every 1 to 2 weeks. We make a trip out. So
Matt, can you talk about the curriculum requirements? Is there any American government requirements for teaching? You mentioned the Navajo language. Is that required by the Navajo reservation? And then what is the rest of your curriculum? You talked about being able to use Bible in the classroom, et cetera. So can you expand a bit on that?
yeah, because the school doesn't take government funding, they really have a lot of freedom. Now, private schools in general, there are certain curricular areas that they have to teach, and those would be math and reading, grammar, science, and history would be the required subjects. But here at the school, we do probably the greatest joy I have every day is teaching Bible. I love to teach Bible, and then they also have a Navajo class that they go to twice a week, and that's just a Christian sister who is working to help with the language, I guess, help kids preserve their language. Some of the kids are growing up where their grandparents are, a lot of them are living with grandparents. And so their grandparents are speaking Navajo. They're hearing it, but they can't produce it. So they have some level of familiarity. And so the Navajo classes are just aimed to try to preserve their language and to encourage them in using that, because there really is a generational divide, with the elderly speaking mainly in Navajo, and then the younger generations speaking it less and less. So my wife is reminding me that a number of kids are living with grandparents. There's not a lot of economic opportunity on the reservation, so a lot of parents are moving out to Farmington or Albuquerque or Phoenix and getting jobs. And so they might come in on the weekends or maybe even once a month to visit the kids. And meanwhile, the kids are being raised by grandparents in many cases, or aunties and uncles.
Is Navajo a written language?
It is. Yeah, there's when I look at Navajo in its written form, it's befuddling. They have a lot of characters that I'm not familiar with. But yes, it is a written language. I don't know that I don't know when the Navajo script was put together. I think maybe 150 years ago, it would have just been strictly an oral language.
Have you learned the language?
Um, I don't I don't have high hopes for myself. They say that it's one of the hardest languages to learn. It was used as a code language during World War II. They had Navajo code talkers, and what my goal and my hope would be to learn some greetings and some common phrases, and um, try to be polite and pleasant. My children, I have higher hopes for them. They're taking the Navajo classes, and they're younger. I'm hoping that they'll pick up some of the Navajo. I think it is a struggle because their peers at the school are not really speaking Navajo. It's the older adults that are speaking Navajo. So there's not as many opportunities to practice.
There's a question someone online wrote, Matt, what have you found to be your biggest obstacle?
What have I found to be my biggest obstacle? I think that we're new here. There are other families that have been here on the mission station for a longer period of time, and so there is a certain amount of awkwardness knowing where we fit in. I mean, we know what our role is and we know what we're here to do, but as far as um, just um, kind of laying low and just learning how things operate with there are other missionary families living here. And so I don't know if that's, I don't know if I would say that's an obstacle. It's just something to adjust to. It's a challenge. It's something to adjust to and to learn um, how things work around here. I felt like I answered the question without answering it.
I have a question. You said teaching Bible is your favorite thing. I was wondering if there was anything on the last bit that you taught your students, any verse or passage that you remember teaching them that they maybe received or hadn't heard or was special.
Well, this year we're uh, every 3 years they go through a cycle, you might say. So this year we're focusing on Genesis through King David, and we're 6 weeks in. I'm on Genesis chapter. Let's see. I was going to do chapter 12 or start chapter 12 today, and but by reviewing, I'm still stuck in chapter 11. So I'm not sure if I'll make it all the way to King David. But it's interesting. We're also learning John 3 verses 16 through 21, and it's neat to as we're going through Genesis and thinking about how sin came into the world, um, but then also memorizing John chapter 3 verses 16 through 21 about God's plan of salvation, sending His Son into the world. It's really been it's opened up some. I don't know. It's neat to be able to do those two things at once. And then today, one of the girls in my class, we were reading about the Tower of Babel or Babel, and where it says God said, "Let us go down and confuse the languages." So she raised the question, well, who is He talking to? And so we were able to talk about the Trinity, and some of the kids were familiar with the hymn "Holy, Holy, Holy." And so we sang a verse of that, and God in three persons, blessed Trinity. So there's just some, I don't know, it just seems like I wish I could say, oh yeah, there was this, but it's just every day there's something that's neat. Um, how the Lord will kind of bring some of those thoughts together from Genesis and from John where we're memorizing. So I don't know if that answers your question or not.
was a great answer.
Oh, that's wonderful. Thank you so much for being able to be on with us tonight. It's good to see you guys and nice to hear face to face. Mm, mm. And, personally, we pray for you, and as an assembly, we want to commit to pray for you also. So anytime if there are specific needs, let us know either through us or Rob or any of the contacts at the assembly, so that we can make a concerted effort to pray for that publicly and corporately as well. Any other specific prayer requests at this time, like immediate for your own family?
Yeah, I think I alluded to it earlier. I think a few of our little boys are finding it hard. There's I guess maybe I would use the word bullying. um Sarah grew up in Zambia, and they have a term for white people. It's called Chandeli. Well, here we're the Bilaganas. We're the white people. And so it's um a lot of these kids, they have, I don't know if it comes down through families or whatever. It's just our kids are having a hard time being accepted into the group. And I think we're confident that the Lord called us here, and we know that He has His purposes for us here, but um, there's adjustments that the kids are needing to make too. So recently we read Romans 12 and just thought about, how do we handle it when people are, that we should bless and do not curse and love our enemies. And so we've been praying for there's just a couple boys who are kind of causing trouble. So we've been praying for them, but that's kind of one thing. As parents, it's just hard to see kids getting picked on and that sort of thing. But we're just praying that that there would be a breakthrough, and that we would be able to, that the two kids that are kind of the troublemakers, that we would be able to minister to them also. So that would be a prayer request.
Okay, certainly, definitely. Keep that in mind. Maybe we could go to a time of prayer now to pray for Matt and Sarah and their family and the Emmanuel Mission School and some of the brothers.